I know some of you saw me get on and off the internet tonight. That's because we were testing new things, we were trying new things in a whole different way. But you know what? Determination is a hell of a thing. And this is going to be a great show this evening. Trust me, it's a little different. My background is different. The circumstances are different. And I'll tell you why, just very briefly. I'm not in the normal studio, but things change. So we have to be adaptable to change. Some of you, as I said, saw us pop in and out of Facebook Live and on YouTube Live today. We were testing a lot of things because we're trying to circumvent the situation as we're building. So, having said all of that, there was an interview that I wanted to have this evening that was very, very important to me because I've been away from you guys too long. And I just wanted to touch on something that I felt was important and talk to you about a very special person in my life who wrote a book and the power of this book. And we're going to have a little chat. But I do want to take the time before I get started with that to talk to you about Breast Cancer Awareness Month. It's almost over. And I hope all you ladies and men actually went out and had your breast checked and did your mammograms. I know I did. And as we go along in the season, I will talk to you about what happened with me because they did find something and I went through a series of testing. And rather than not talk about it, because I grew up in the age where we didn't talk about things like that, I want to talk about it because I think it's important. And I think, especially for women of color, that we are open and honest about things like this because it is a journey and it is really scary. And I've had two people who have really, really been there for me through this process. One of which I actually want to call out, and her name is Robin Walker. She really is an amazing sister and just has given me a lot of strength and a lot of energy. And I'm not going to do this right now because I'm going to cry through it. Anyway, she's just been awesome. And Robin, if you're out there listening, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. As we go through the journey, I know that I will be able to face it as you have been there to hold my hand. So I appreciate it. Okay, so we explained the things, and I always have my little index cards and all my meeting notes. So we explained why things looked a little different, and I think we're going to keep them this way. So, like I said, you'll be a part of the journey, you'll be a part of the building, but the important thing is that we stay on track and keep going forward. And we're trying new things, and again, I'll always be here. Okay, so because I love you guys. Now, here's another big change. And this is terribly exciting for me because I'm expanding. It's not just going to be Facebook Live and it's not just going to be the catch ups on YouTube. I'm on my normal platforms, which are Anchor, Google Podcasts, Twitcher, Stitcher, Overcast, Radio Public, Breaker, Pocket Cast, YouTube Live, and also now you can click and subscribe and leave me a little comment and touch that little bell thingy because we're going to be going live there a lot. So I'm excited about that. But don't forget to click and subscribe. All righty. And we're also live on ESP Speaks. And whatever guests that I have, if they have a Facebook page, will go live to that page too. So you don't have to hunt all over the place to look for me anymore. I'll be right there and everywhere. And of course, I'm always looking for show ideas. So you guys can give us a buzz. You can call us at 929-336-7887. And that's a number that's always on. So even if you get me on the answering machine, talk to me, leave a message, or you can type at ESP Speaks, or you can send me an email at ESP Speaks at espspeaks.com. Okay, so now I get to, oh, one more thing. This is voting week. Um, Today's the 24th in the state of New York. Early voting started today. Go vote. You can't complain about the next 4 years if you don't actually step out and do something. So go vote. All right. So, like I said, I have a very close and special friend that I grew up with him. I'm a little bit older, so I kind of changed diapers, but his dad was an amazing man in my life. So I got to watch him grow up and see him develop. So it's been an amazing experience to reconnect with him after all of this time. He's actually my god brother, and his name is Daryl James. Now he wrote a book called Growing into a Man of Grace. And I'm going to put the picture up in a moment. But before we end the broadcast, you'll get to see the picture. And while we're talking to him, he's going to tell you how you can get it and what platforms he's on as well. Um, I know some of you saw my flyer. There were two other guests that were supposed to be on this evening. One of them had a medical emergency. Another one had another thing that he had to do, is actually three. And one of them had difficulty connecting. So, we weren't going to push against it. Maybe it was just supposed to be a one-man interview, and I'm perfectly fine with that because that just gives me more time to spend with Daryl. So, I do want to tell you about one of our guests. That one of the guests that couldn't be here, which was Jeff LaFleur. He is going to be starting a podcast named Prospectively Yours, and that's going to be on, I believe it's Sundays at 4. And he's going to be dealing with a lot of issues with men, which is important, and sensitivities and so on, and a broad spectrum of things. So check him out. He's at Prospectively Yours on Facebook. So look him up, and I hope you enjoy his show because he's really good. All right, so let's jump into Daryl now. So, Daryl James, because he's on screen and he's been listening to my spiel the whole time. How are you?
I'm blessed, God sister.
Wonderful.
How are you?
So, I'm well, out of breath. I'm good. I'm good. The last couple of days has been stressful, but the last week, a couple of weeks has been more stressful because once again, as I said in the beginning, I went on a breast cancer journey and had to do a biopsy. So I'll do a show on that later on. But right now, it's about you growing in grace. So tell us about this book. Tell us how we got there. Just where where are we going with this? Talk to us.
Well, the bottom line is that growing up, as far as how I did, where I was nothing but surrounded by religion, faith, and principles, and because just like I come from a Caribbean family, and they basically instilled that in me. It was one of those situations, whereas it's not if you're going to go to church, you're going to go to church.
Mm,
So I lived that life for quite a while until it actually stuck to me. And then I started to realize that there was a reason and incentive for why my parents were the way they were. They had to basically make sure that it was instilled in me that God was who I needed to lean on. God
mhm,
was going to be the one that was going to order my path. And of course, just like any other person that's growing up from a child to adolescence into adulthood, we waver off the path. We seem to thinking like everything is going to go great, but somehow, some way, we like to get in our own way and veer. So I veered quite a few times, and it's just God's grace keeping me right back on that path, putting me right back on that path to make me the man that I am now. This is
mhm.
about that. It's about my journey on how I backslid quite a few times, but God's grace kept me on the straight and narrow and kept me on that path.
Okay. So for the viewers that are not familiar with those terms, because yes, we did grow up in Caribbean families, but I was half Caribbean and half Asian, and then we were both basically countrymen. And there are terms that we are using that some people may not be familiar with.
Mhm.
So I will ask you to elaborate on them as we go through the process. But I want to ask you something because you mentioned the family, and you actually mentioned that you were the middle child. And I know your sisters. You were stuck between two women. And in the book, you kind of allude to the jock situation and being the nerd and being the quiet guy. And yes, you were. So I want you to talk about a series of things, because one is being that quiet person and
Mhm,
being that nerd, so to speak.
mhm,
And then how did the sister, because your older sister I went to school with,
mhm.
and your younger sister, I changed her diapers. How did being sandwiched between all of that female energy affect who you were as a becoming man, as a growing man?
You know, the beautiful part about it is that I was mainly raised by my mom and my older sister. So it just seems like all they did was instill in me the values of being a gentleman, the values of
Mm,
understanding the beauty and also the respect of a woman. And because of the fact I got surrounded by that, of course, you're going to have some pitfalls. There are going to be certain things that you got to get used to. Like, for example, I crack this joke all the time, but one of the things that I was always aware of was the fact that being the only other male in the house besides my father, I had to take care of the women in the house. So
mm.
there was nothing that was off limits. So I cooked, I ironed, I cleaned, and I actually went to the store for the sanitary napkins. Yes, I can say that. I did it, and I did it, and I used to get all the jokes.
I don't think we needed to know that.
Just want everybody to know that the situation is that there was nothing that was prohibited because I was a man. And I wasn't no, it was more of a fact of understanding that, hey, this is a part of life.
Mhm.
It literally prepared me for when I got older because I was never ashamed of that. It's what you have to do. It's what happens. It's something of a natural nature. So all I know is that it brought me closer to my mom. It brought me closer to my sisters and what have you. And yeah, me and my sisters, we bumped heads, but what brothers and sisters don't?
Yeah.
So in that aspect, and what happened was is that it also developed my sensitive nature because my
Mm.
sensitive nature was where I had a appeal to certain things that most younger men at my age did not appeal to. They didn't look at it as like I did. They didn't see the feelings of a certain young lady that was being trotted upon or what have you, because most young men were actually thinking that they had to be mean, that they had to be abrupt, and they had to be disruptive in order to get the girl. So where
Mm.
I fit in was actually the friend zone. I never really fit into that part. Whereas, you know, I was the desire. I was the hunk. I was the hot dude. You know what I'm saying? It was more of a fact that, you know, like I said in my book, there was the jocks, there was the nerds, and there were the popular people. So
Right.
I had maybe a circumference, but a little bit of each. I don't know, but it just seems like to me that I was a misfit, and I didn't know how I was actually going to be able to be defined. But I found my own niche through my music, and that's where I started to develop my own character, my own being, my own person, and that's how I progressed from those that class system.
So, with all of that feminine energy
Hmm.
and it just being you and dad in the house, and I remember dad used to travel a lot.
Hmm.
How did that affect your masculinity? Or do you feel that it affected your masculinity?
I think what it did was is that even though I was raised by my mother, I yearned for that father and son relationship. So I never got it because I really don't know if my father got it. I don't know if he knew how to be a father to a son. Matter of fact, he was more intuitive to my older sister Donalda and to my younger sister Patricia. But as far as me, I vied for his attention. I fought for it. I did so many things to try to get his attention. Like he was into sports. I never really was, but when I was in high school, I joined the football team. I ran track just so I could catch his eye, but it just didn't, it just didn't work. So
And you didn't play cricket? Because
no,
cricket
I
would
didn't
have
play
gone,
cricket. No, I did not. And my
because
father
that was
always,
his game.
I know that was his thing. And, it got to the point where as I started to despise sports because it just, I couldn't make any kind of connection with my dad.
Wow.
And it kind of hurt, but where my wounds and where I was actually feeling hurt, that's where my mom picked up. She was basically letting me know, she was like, you're my one and only son. And
Mhm.
I actually carried that, except what made me a mama's boy. I wanted to actually try to be as close as I could with my dad, but he was very distant, very distant. So it just made it difficult because I got surrounded by people who were very close with their fathers, and just watching that made me yearn it even more. So it just was that kind of dynamic that yeah, you would actually wonder if that would define your masculinity. But I've learned through my travels and through my walk that masculinity is not in the outside.
Mhm.
Masculinity starts from the inside.
Yes.
Because when you have your masculinity in the inside and it's proven, it will show on the outside. You
Mhm.
don't really have to define it. You don't have to break it down. You don't have to give it a title or definition. It's right there. So I never really felt that I had to like anything challenge my masculinity, anything actually made different thought processes about my masculinity. I know I'm 100% male. I thank God for how I was brought up. And, you know, of course, I wanted some things to be different, but so be it. I know who I am, and I'm very proud of the man I've become.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Uh, just one final question on dad. Did you feel that he, as an adult now,
Mhm.
looking back in retrospect, did you feel that he may have been afraid to connect because he was missing time? Or you said that he connected better with the your sisters,
Mhm.
that he was just more comfortable with the princesses as opposed to um doing the buddy buddy thing. I mean, have you gone through a reasoning with this, or should I just leave that whole question process alone?
No, no, don't do that. I feel what happened was is that he made an attempt one time to and my mom, she cracks jokes about it because she's like, the only time you take your son anywhere is if you get something for free. And it's true, because he actually took me to a baseball game with my good friend that I call my cousin David. Shout out to David Cumberbatch, that we went to go see a game together. And I was excited because I was there with my dad. But I just didn't feel that father-son bond. I just didn't feel it. Meanwhile, I know that my cousin David, he had that bond with his father, where he
Hmm.
sat him down and showed him things that I wish my dad was going to show me, like how to balance a checkbook, how to work on your car, how to do things, and how do you get prepared and what have you. I used to come to his house and watch the way they were living and be like, wow, why can't I have that? Am I
Hmm.
such a bad kid? And I would even ask my mom, I was like, am I a bad son? She said, no, you're not a bad son. I don't understand what's wrong with your father. It made me kind of think like maybe there's something missing. But now in adulthood, where he was very sickly, and he got to see me, he would say all of the things that I wanted him to say when I was younger. Like, for example, the fact of being a grandfather for my children, he told me he
Hmm.
was proud. And when I was diagnosed with sleep apnea, he never believed it till he got to see it for himself. And
Hmm.
then he would actually be in a state of worry, or now he's in awareness and wondering, you know, how long was this going on when we told him from the beginning. But that's what his heart was like when he was getting sicker. And that's why I wish I had more time with him so that we could have like picked up what we left off, where we left off, and see if like we could have broadened it, because it was never too late to actually have a father-son relationship. But
Yes.
passed away, it was too late.
Wow. And it's funny because you're speaking, and because I knew him
Mm-hmm.
very well, I'm actually envisioning the processes all in my head as we're going through. And it's very strange. I mean, this was your journey, but it's so strange how our parents, because they have that do as I say, not do as I do kind of thing.
Yep.
And I'm listening to you talk about him, and part of me is like, yeah, I could see that. And the other part of me is like, wow, really? Because
Mm-hmm.
he was always so intuitive with the people around him. But now you're saying, I'm looking at it because you're saying about Donna and Pat, he had a female intuition that kind of reached out to them. So maybe with my sisters and myself, that's why it was so easy for him after my father passed, because he stepped in. But anyway, this interview is not about me, it's about you. Um, so now we touched on something. The do as I say, not as I do. So
Mm-hmm.
let's go back to the journey of you growing up as a man, a
Right.
young man, with all of these components that we've already discussed,
Mm-hmm.
and touching on that because there was no male figure that was strongly saying to you, hey, do what I do. You claim to have been looking at other people's parents. So
Mm-hmm.
go deeper with that, because here's another component. You were also raised in Catholic school.
Yes, I was.
That alone is a nightmare. So I'm going to just leave it there and let you run.
Well, you got to look at it like this. It almost looked like that I was a Christian mutt because I came from Ebenezer Pilgrim, right?
Hmm.
And I also came from a Moravian, and then I was in Catholic school all my life. So the only thing that I can actually say that all of them shared was the fact of believing in God, believing that Jesus was the Savior, and believing that the Holy Spirit was our comforter. So they believed in the Blessed Trinity. So that kept me on a fix. Like I knew that all that was true.
Hmm.
However, when you think about the blend itself, it actually starts to kind of confuse you, because you understand how we were at Ebenezer. It was like, you can't do that when you're in
Hmm.
Moravian. Moravian sound like opera. I mean, let's keep it real. It was boring. It was boring.
Hey, hey, don't make fun of opera.
Keeping it real. Like when I was in Catholic school, it just seemed like to me, even though they were regular prayers that we were so used to, they
Hmm.
basically sang the entire prayer.
Dang it. Hmm.
So I'm listening and I'm saying to myself, wow. Now the thing that made me kind of feel like a comparison was that's exactly what they did in Moravia.
Mm.
Did that. So I said, okay, so I can understand that, but I'm more in tune to either Protestant or Baptist, something where I can actually feel it in my soul. Because the first time that I started to acknowledge what was happening inside the church, and I started seeing people fall out on the ground and scream out hallelujah and glory and put holy oil on them and stuff like that, it was confusing.
Mm.
It was very confusing. But now, as I got older and what have you, and I started to understand how the Holy Spirit meets people where they need to be met,
Exactly.
it's so invigorating. It's invigorating once you realize that there's no age limit for you to have a relationship with God. As a matter of fact, the earlier the better,
Mm.
because it will take you through everything you need and everything that you would probably not even think that you need him for. But he is there. He's the constant. And my life was just like that. Every time I thought that I didn't need him, he proved to me that I did. And I kept thinking, like, then why do I keep getting in my own way? Well,
Mm.
it's the flesh. Our flesh
Yeah,
always gets.
we do that. We do that. And that's part of the journey, getting in your own way. That's part of the journey.
Absolutely, absolutely. But it's a beautiful
So,
journey.
I see that you're stuck a little there. So did we lose a recording?
No, I think what happened is that maybe it might have been the internet, but we're back.
Okay. You know, this even with this is so strange. Normally we would come to meet each other or whatever, but this age of COVID and people getting sick and now the numbers are up and you got to quarantine between states. I just want to take a moment to thank you for doing the interview in this way because like I said, Lord knows it was a journey just to get to this. But but it's amazing and once again I'm proud of you with this book, but there is more because I want to go into you in your adult life.
Mhm.
Because there's two subjects that I want people to hear from you, if you don't mind, and to connect with, because a large majority of my audience are men
Mhm.
and they don't readily talk about these type of feelings. And I think it's important that they at least be able to hear, hey, I feel like that, but I can't say it out loud.
Right.
It's nice to have, male guests where we can get into certain things that you're willing to talk about. Having that said, I want
Mhm.
to go into marriage, and there's a couple of levels in marriage because you were married and divorced,
Yes. Twice.
and also married and widowered,
Yes.
and those are two biggies.
Yes, they are.
So, if you will,
Sure.
I'm not trying to get all up in your business and have tea, but talk about the connection of the growth process into the marriage and then the divorce. Because, as far as I'm concerned, you're the perfect husband because you were raised with sisters and all of that energy. And, you tend to be a more well rounded man because you have those components. But then you come into a marriage situation and then it fails.
Mhm.
And then we'll let you do that level first and then we'll go on to the next one.
Okay. Okay. I think in most relationships, because of the fact that meeting people is a visual concept. You meet them first when you see them. You see what if you like what you see, you invest. So, and you
Mm.
try to see if it can go any further or if it's allowed to go any further. And I think what happened is that that component of the visual perception, it stops there and it doesn't go any further because now you're trying to make something out of something that you haven't even invested time into. I've seen this done so many times that I may be guilty of this myself. Whereas I met somebody, the visual was outstanding, beautiful, amazing, and I already claimed her. I already thought that I could have this woman. I already thought that we could have something, but we really never really got to know each other.
Hmm.
We never took that time to actually say, you know what, I like this, I don't like that. The likes and dislikes, they really mean something. That's why friendship is paramount. I truly agree with that. Friendship is paramount. And that was one of the things that I really didn't have with my first or second wife. I think what happened is that we pretty much invested into each other and thought that we could build a life. We thought that we could actually do stuff and we thought that we could progress, but there was still too much that was in between that we never fixed.
Whoa, wait, you just jacked me up. You realize that because you said first and second. I didn't realize because I know you're third.
My third.
But see, I didn't know she was your third. I thought she was your second. So you really jacked me up. You trying to run a race with me now. Okay, okay. So you rushed it.
I did.
Okay.
I did. And then I think what really comes into play here is usually when you have some kind of disagreement or relationship doesn't work, we do that blame game. It's like,
Mm.
you know what? it's her fault. She did this, she did that. She didn't think about this, she didn't care about me, and what have you. But I had to actually do some serious analysis and say to myself, well, you know what, Daryl? He was the first wife, he was the second wife, and it's pretty much almost in the same bucket. But you're the common denominator. So it can't be both of them. It can't be just them. It has to be something that you're contributing. Because
Applause. Yeah, so you checked you. Applause. Most men can't check themselves. That's an anomaly right there. Thank you.
I'm telling you, it was one of the most eye-opening things ever, because when I think about my first wife and I think about my second wife, the thing is that they both in healthy relationships right now. So
Mm,
I just wasn't the one.
got you.
I just wasn't the one. And I remember right after my second divorce that I heard the Lord told me to wait. I
Mm,
heard the Lord told me to wait because I was the one that was always doing the hunting, the seeking. A matter of fact, it was a point where it might have been a little bit stalkerish. I ain't even gonna lie. I'm not gonna front. I was that type of dude, but it was also reflected in my um inferiority of my own self. Like I
mm,
really didn't feel very comfortable in my own skin. So I looked for somebody that I thought may take me the way that I was and just poured into this person to the point whereas I saturated them. I did. I will admit that. And I think what happens is that in masculinity, a lot of us actually believe that the outside bravado is all you need.
mm,
There's no context. There's no content. There is nothing inside, because it's like a friend of mine told me this, and I thought it was funny, but it's true. You can have fun with the bad boy, but do you marry the bad boy or the good man?
mm.
And it goes the same way. You can have fun with the fast girl, but is that the one that you want to bring home to mama? So all of these things factor. And I remember when the Lord told me to wait, that's when my angel came into my life, where she actually came in as innocent as possible. She only she was so refreshing. She was so open-minded. She was so beautiful in just tone, because I hadn't seen her yet. All I had was this picture that was on MySpace. Yes, y'all, MySpace. MySpace is where I met my angel, and she was that type of person that was very open. She was very caring, and all she did was talk about my blog, the blog that I actually had up on MySpace. That we don't do too many blogs now, but back then we did, because it actually signified who we were and what
Mm-hmm.
we were about. And she loved it, but I didn't see it till 3 months later. And when I did see it, I apologized and I was like, thank you so much for your compliment. I hope you have a blessed day. Next thing I know, 4 months later, I just checked to see how she was for Valentine's Day, because she was married and she was just a very sweet person. She let me know her Valentine's Day wasn't going very well, and we built a friendship to the point whereas I was telling her all about my dates and we were laughing and cracking up, because
Mm-hmm.
there's some doozies out there, S. Some doozies. There's some.
Yeah, I know. I
I,
married four of them.
I've met women that wanted to marry me on the spot, move into my house, ready to start a family, and I was like, we just met.
Yeah, it's a crazy thing. And that goes to show you that people really, their souls are so desperate for something that as soon as
Yes,
something good or even shows as being slightly good comes into them and they gravitate and just suck it up.
yes, yes.
But that's a whole nother show. But let's come back to Sharon, because that's my girl. And I think in your journey in writing this book, um, this was kind of the cherry, the icing on the cake with the cherry with her, because she was everything that you wanted and needed and made you better and made her better.
Yes.
And then I'm not going to give it away. I want you to tell the next step of this, because it's truly a test which you had to go through in this marriage. And I grew close to her in this time period that you're about to talk about. So I'm going to once again sit back and just let you run with it.
I think the most beautiful thing is that especially at this day and age, where men don't feel validated. They feel like they're working themselves to death, and they're not really getting the accreditation or they're getting the acknowledgments that they rightfully deserve. If you really think about it, Father's Day is like almost the worst day of the year, because it's almost as if, you know, you're cramming to get this man the same tie, the same sock, the same whatever toolbox or what have you, but it's so much more than that. And
Hmm.
I want to say that what I got from Sharon was something that was beyond any kind of comprehension. Imagine waking up every time to be told how awesome you are, how much they appreciate you, how much they love you, how much, you know, that they realize how much their lives have changed because you stepped into it. That only affirms or gives validation to what God had in me already that I didn't see. And it's one of those things, whereas I always walked with my chest out because she made me feel like that. It was like I would move heaven and earth for you because of how you feel about me. That was what I felt with Sharon every day. It was never a day that I missed, that she never reminded me how much she appreciated me. And from the time we met, I mean, she has been a growing force that allowed me to come back to the church, because when my pastor passed away from United Moravian, I was lost. And it's not like I went to the church as avidly as I should. Just knowing he was gone was enough to put me in a terrible misunderstanding. I just couldn't understand. I was like, wow, you know, I didn't realize it. And in a comparison to my father and Reverend Lloyd, was one of the things he used to always do was kiss me on the cheek. And my father would do the same thing. I telling you right now that I miss that. I miss when my dad kissed me on the cheek, because that was where he showed me he loved me. When I started to grow up and get a little bit older, I was like, Dad, you can't kiss me on the cheek anymore. I'm too old. And then I would always shy away from Reverend Lloyd. But I
Mm.
realized that these were the way that both of these men showed love. And now that they're gone, I miss it. When you're older now, you see things from a different perspective.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, wow. But what I get from Sharon was like an unbelievable force of love, cherishment, companionship. I never felt alone. I never felt hurt. I could feel like I could be myself in its entirety. I could shed tears, and all she would do was hold me. Or she wouldn't make fun of me, and she would never challenge my manhood. She never made me feel like I was less of a man because something actually brought me to tears.
Hmm.
Or the fact was like, she was like, he's man enough to cry in front of me. I mean, who does that?
No, it takes strength to cry. Women understand the strength that tears have and how cleansing they are. So when we see a man who's willing to connect with that,
Absolutely.
it's pretty awesome. But um
Can't be, but you know what? When I was on Prospectively Yours with Jeff LaFleur, shout out to Jeff. I remember one thing that we talked about, and this would actually give some connotation. Men always feel that when they let that floodgates out, they don't know how to bring it back in.
Mm.
So they're afraid. They are afraid to show emotion. And I even think about, there was one episode on this show called Friends where Bruce Willis was on there dating Rachel. And what happened was, since he was this stern type of dude, and he always looked like he was in command and he looked mean all the time, she wanted to see his soft side. She begged to see his soft side. And then when he finally did show his soft side, he couldn't stop. He couldn't stop. He couldn't bring back the water. She's like, no. I want that guy that I like, that the one that was strong, the one that was stern.
The manly man.
Yes. And that's what men are afraid of. Men are afraid that they're going to be seen as weak. Listen, I can tell you right now, I'm meek, but I ain't weak.
Well, vulnerability to women represents strength as well. And men need to understand that, which again is why we're having this conversation. But I'm looking at the time that we're spending here, and I don't want to go outside of your parameters because I know that you have another engagement. So I want to make sure I get these other final questions in. Here's a biggie. How do we get your book? Because I want to come back to Sharon because there's another point that we didn't get to. How do we get your book? Because that's important. What platforms are you on? And we're going to put the book up, and we're going to put how to get the book in our comments field when we're done. But are you on Amazon? Are you on BookBaby? Are they ordering directly? How do we do this?
Well, I'm on Amazon, and you can go on there and look for Daryl James, Growing into a Man of Grace.
Mm-hmm.
My page, Daryl James, the author, also has information where you can purchase the book directly from me, the author, and I will give you an autographed copy, and it gives you all the information of what you might need to do in order to purchase the copy.
Okay. All right. And once again, we will put all of that information up for you so that you can get a copy of this incredible book. And I think that you should go on the direct version directly to him because you get the signed copy. If you order it from Amazon, you don't get the signed copy. It's worth it. So let's come back to the she's
Yes.
I have to be careful because I don't want to be a mess, but I love to cry on all of my shows because it's just so heart-wrenching. But
Yes.
I was friends with Sharon, and there was a medical situation,
Yes.
and it's all yours. Go ahead.
Well, what happened was is that during the time that we were dating, we found out that she was going into kidney failure. She was suffered from renal failure, and one of her kidneys was about to shut down. And although they gave her all the medication that she was supposed to take, eventually what was going to have to happen was she was going to have to do dialysis. So we got prepared for that, and I think what happened was is that she was more worried about how I was going to take it. What was I going to do? Because she had somebody in her life that didn't value her and didn't really care about her feelings. Now she was dealing with somebody who had her feelings on top of his list and always had her in his mind, in his heart, and what have you. So it made her feel even more comfortable when it came to decisions like this or facing certain oppositions that she didn't think that anybody else would be prepared to handle. She knew that I could. And when we found out about it, I said, it doesn't matter. It's what God says. It's not what anybody else says. We're going to get through this together. We're going to do what we have to do. We're going to go on every appointment. We're going to get every medication. And we're going to actually keep praying because we know that whatever is going to be said, God has the final word. And at the end of the day, what happened was is that she grew weaker, but her faith was unbelievable. She was the type of person that it didn't matter what she was going through. And I remember she used to ask me, she was like, why me? Why me? And then I remember God told me, why not you? And I remember that it was more of a fact. I said, do you not understand what's going on here? And she said, no. And I said, you are a living and walking testimony that no matter what you do, there's no one that can pale in comparison to your strength.
Mm-hmm.
Your strength was beyond what most people could even possibly do in their healthy age.
That's
So
right.
I told her, I said, listen, I truly believe that this is almost like a sign of like what Paul went through when he had that thorn in his side. God didn't take the thorn out of his side, and he still preached, and he still taught, and he still did all the things that Jesus told him to do. So this is not going to be, I wish that God would heal you, but if even if he doesn't, does that make him less than God? And she
Mm.
said no. And that's one of the things that made me love her even more, because she pressed on. She stayed strong. She kept that smile on her face. She stayed vigilant. She always was the type of person that just gave me positivity. She was more worried about me than she was about herself. What that's strength that's undeniable.
That's right.
That strength.
Even before she knew that eventually she was going to pass. And I remember in the last week before she wasn't really speaking anymore, she and I had a conversation, and I was like, "But Sharon, really? You're talking about him right now?" She was more concerned about you on a continuous basis, even up to the end, which I thought was amazing. Every love should be like the love that the two of you had. And I'm going to ask you a very important question that I'm sure all of our listeners, both male and female, want to hear about this love that we're talking about.
Absolutely.
As a widower now, it's been almost a year. It's been a little over a year, actually. Do you ever feel that you're going to be able to have a love like that again? Do you feel that you could have that in your life? Because you guys were, I mean, you guys even dressed like twins. It was
Yeah.
insane. It was intense, the type of love that you guys had. Do you ever feel that you could have that again?
There was a point where I actually believed that that couldn't happen again. And I could see why somebody that has experienced what I experienced, and being a widow or a widower, would not even want to engage in the fact of finding anybody new, or never mind engaging in the process of getting married. But I have to be honest and say, it was God that brought Sharon to me.
Hmm.
So if God brought Sharon to me, why would I block another blessing that he would?
Mm,
I,
okay.
I truly believe that God has nothing but my best interests. And if he actually believes that I deserve someone in my life to actually help me in the continuing of my life, then
Mm.
I will not turn that away, because it's God given. And I know that he only wants the best for me because he loves me.
So you hear that, ladies? He's open to it again. Oh my goodness. Well, you know what? I have to say this because we're pushing on time, and this has been a fabulous interview. I thank you so much for sitting with me and chatting, because we've been trying to plan this for a while, and I hope you will come back again so we can get even more into the book. But when are you going to be writing your next one? Because I think that you should have one about Sharon. I think that you really should be writing again, because it's been a journey. It really has been a journey. The healing process,
Yes.
because we need to talk about that. And that's what, on the next time you come back on the show, I want to talk about the healing process, what it means to be a widower, what have you gone through, because people don't get that having someone's clothes hanging in the closet that you took care of and you see every day, and it's very traumatic to have to pack those things up. I mean, it's traumatic enough when we have parents that we have to do that for,
Mm-hmm.
or heaven forbid a child. I mean, God bless the parent who's had to bury their child. But when it's your spouse and it was such a beautiful love, it's very difficult. So we have to talk about all of that. But before we go, I want to hear any final thoughts or final statements that you need to say, because I don't want the circuit to cut without us getting everything in that you need to say.
Sure, sure. One of the things I want to also say is that in that journey, I had decided that I was going to go ahead and move on because it was basically Sharon's confidence and Sharon's warmth and her appreciation and encouragement that made me write the book in the first place. So I am going to do another book. It's going to be dedicated to her, and it's going to be the memoirs of our love together, our marriage, and how it affected me in such a deep way. And I also want to close by saying that if you actually feel that, and this goes out to all my brothers and sisters out there, if you actually believe that you cannot find love, it's because I believe you're going about it the wrong way. I think the main thing that you need to do is realize who is first. And that's what really made our marriage paramount. God is first. When God is
Mm.
first, everything comes after. Everything will open up to you. Everything is going to be at your feet because God wants you to have it. And I really believe that that will happen to you once you actually submit. Once you actually commit and you say to the Lord, Lord, have me, I'm yours. He will grant you your every wish. He will actually bless you to the point where you actually feel like you have no room for these blessings,
Mm.
because I know what God did for me. That blessing that I received, called Sharon Christine James, will be indelible in my heart for forever. And I'm so grateful that I had that experience, because I was the one man that can actually say I did till death do you part.
All right. And there you have it. You got to have the higher being as a part of your relationship, or you're not going to have a solid relationship.
Yeah.
And Daryl James, we thank you so much for sharing the time and being with us. And we want you to say the name of the book again by Daryl James. It is
Growing into a man of grace.
Growing into a Man of Grace. It's on Amazon. I'm going to put all the information there for you to get what you need. Get the signed copy. I'm telling you, you're going to really wish that you got the signed copy. And thanks again for being here with us. And ladies and gentlemen, on next week's show, I'm going to be dealing with another really intricate subject with midwives and doulas and having and carrying a child as a Black woman in America. Going into the system is very difficult, and people don't understand that we need to prepare ourselves long before we even get pregnant. But I'm going to go through that journey, and I'm going to have a certified midwife of the highest caliber with us. And she's going to be talking to us about all of the things you need to look for. And we're going to have Ayanna Davison with us the next time around. But until then, thank you. I love you. It's so nice to be back. And remember, be positive, but test negative. We'll see you next time on ESP Speaks. Peace, guys.
Awesome.